Diana stopped like a stumbling block, unable to believe her eyes. She thought she had seen a ghost. But no, there he was, quite alive, smiling in a stylish, expensive coat and shined shoes, not in the weather, so not on foot, and just as handsome. There is no wedding ring, he is not married, or maybe he just doesn't wear one or is just about to get married. It can't be that such a handsome and apparently quite wealthy man did not have a soulmate. Memory obligingly brought Diana back 20 years ago. Love burst into her life like a tornado. One look and the girl realized that she was lost. Fortunately, her feelings were mutual. The first handsome guy in the neighborhood chose her. An unremarkable skinny girl with wide-open eyes, looking with delight at the object of his adoration. Diana was finishing school, and Henry was preparing to defend his diploma at the local technical school. Further, everything was to develop as in a fairy tale. After graduation, the lovers were to get married immediately and live a happy family life. Diana, no longer hiding from her parents, went shopping, choosing a dress for the most important day in her life. From time to time, the girl became afraid that she was so unscrupulously happy. It seemed to her that there was no such thing, and that it was all just a dream, from which she did not want to wake up. But then Henry came along and she realized it was real. She shared her fears with her lover. But Henry only laughed and kissed her in such a way that Diana immediately forgot about everything but his hands, his lips, and their immense happiness. A week before graduation, Henry disappeared. He didn't show up, didn't answer his cell phone. Julia ran around to all his friends and acquaintances, but they just shrugged their shoulders. They had lost Henry themselves. In despair, the girl dared to go to the parents of her lover. Strangely enough, Diana had seen his parents only a couple of times, and only glimpsed them on the street. Of course she had been to his house, but only in their absence. "Hi, I'm Diana, Henry's friend." The girl stomped hesitantly to the door, before a stern woman with tight lips opened the door for her. And the woman's gaze made her blush and made her want to fall under the ground right now. He just disappeared. I asked his friends, but no one knows anything. So I thought, Henry had gone away for a long, long time. The woman grinned evilly. "What about me? What about me?" Diana's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know what you mean." His mother said, "Henry got his degree and went to work in his specialty where it pays well. There was no mention of you." The woman looked questioningly at the girl and tapped her fingers impatiently against the door jamb. "Have you got everything?" she asked. "Yes, I'm sorry. Goodbye." On woozy legs, Diana walked out of the entryway and, not remembering herself, reached her house. He'd left, said nothing, abandoned her, but it just couldn't be. Diana cried for the rest of the day and night, and then an epiphany came to her. Henry just hadn't had time to tell her anything. Now he would make some money and come back, and they would have a wedding. Inspired by her hunch, the girl began to prepare for the prom. 2 weeks passed, and there was still no news from her beloved. Diana's parents insisted on continuing her studies, but the girl kept procrastinating in the hope that Henry would somehow give her news. But as the days passed, there was no news. "That's it, my dear." His father's fist came down on the table so hard that the plates clinked. "I won't let you deprive yourself of your future because of some asshole. You're going to apply to the institute tomorrow, or Harry." Diana's mother looked sternly at her husband, but the usually docile and gentle man did not even look at his wife this time. "That bastard promised you a golden mountain, and he left without even saying goodbye. He doesn't care about you, and you're about to miss all the deadlines for enrollment. If you're going to continue to suffer for your womanizer, doing nothing and sitting on my neck, you're not going to make it. Either work, study, or revile it somewhere else." Diana realized that her father was right. She had to move on. But to stay in the city, where every square, every street, every bench reminds of her so suddenly cut off happiness, she could not. She quickly packed up and left for New York, where, to her own surprise, she enrolled in one of the universities. Robert appeared unnoticed by the girl. To forget Henry, Diana plunged headlong into her studies and did not immediately notice the clumsy boy in glasses, who blushed and smiled stupidly when she met him. It was only when the girl had difficulties with her term paper and was advised to turn to a guy from the third year who lived in the same dormitory as Diana. The girl finally noticed her admirer. At first, Robert's crush on her pleasing, then became annoying, and then they began to quarrel more often. Diana was angry at the guy for any reason, often comes to her, tries to please her in everything, helps with studies, sweetly jealous, but tries not to show it. Robert, stop all this. A girl shouted out one day, I'll never be your girlfriend. You're not my type and we're too different. Leave me alone. Robert looked at Diana for a minute, as if deciding something, and then nodded and said, Good. He turned away and walked away, and Diana stood in the middle of the room in surprise. She suddenly realized that this ridiculous guy had only cared for her all these years, and that with his departure she would be all alone. But that wasn't the main thing. Diana hadn't noticed how she had gotten used to having him around, and that she couldn't imagine not having Robert in her life. Robert, she whispered with only her lips, but he heard her, standing frozen on the threshold of the room. I'm sorry. The boy turned around and looked at Diana questioningly. She smiled unhesitatingly. Tears sputtered from her eyes. In 2 steps, he found himself next to her and began to cover her face with kisses. Fortunately, the roommates had gone home for the weekend, and nothing prevented the young people from moving into a completely different stage of their relationship. They were married as soon as Robert defended his diploma. A young, promising specialist was immediately accepted in one of the developing firms. Diana continued to study and did not think about tomorrow. All the cares of their small family Robert took on himself. Over time, Diane developed the same passion for her husband that she had once felt for Henry. With each passing year, Diana grew to respect her spouse more and more and fell in love with him. When she realized that she wanted children from this man and informed him about it, Robert was over the moon. The man no longer hoped that it would ever happen. He saw that his wife did not have the same feelings for him as he had for her, and he was very worried about it. One by one, 2 boys were born. Diane enjoyed setting up the new apartment and choosing a school for the children. Robert continued to work hard for the benefit of his extended family, rising to branch manager. This vacation promised to be special. The children were away all weekend at Diane's parents' house. Robert had taken a few days off. Diane had taken a few days off work too. The couple were going to have a new honeymoon, and for such an occasion, the woman decided to prepare something special for dinner. Together with her husband, they came to the shopping center and separated each for their own purchases. This unexpected meeting made Diana nervous. Feeling a glance at her, the man turned around and immediately saw Diana. Even from this distance, the woman could see how surprised he was. Smiling broadly, Henry headed toward her. Diana, what an encounter! He spread his arms wide, intending to hug her. It's so good to see you. He did hug her and even managed to kiss her on the cheek. How are you here? Have you come to see the Capitol? I live here, the woman smiled. Yeah, really? For how long? Henry was genuinely surprised. I decided to move back home a couple years ago. I've been traveling all over the world. Now I think that's enough. I need to put down roots. If I'd known you were in New York, I'd have recruited you. By the way, why don't we have lunch somewhere? Oh, thank you. Diana saw Robert approaching. He no longer looked as ridiculous, clumsy guy in glasses as in his student days. Now he was perhaps as respectable as Henry. But the biggest difference between the 2 men was that Diana loved one of them. I'm afraid it's not going to work. Why not? Henry was genuinely surprised. At that time, Robert approached them, smiling politely. Darling, this is Henry, my fellow countryman. We haven't seen each other for ages, and now we meet unexpectedly. How do you do? Robert extended his hand. The men shook hands. Then perhaps we should all have dinner together, so to speak, to celebrate our acquaintance. Henry suggested. I'd love to, but I'm sorry, my husband and I have other plans. Diana smiled. It was nice to see you. Bye. Have a good day, Robert added, and with a hug, he led her to the exit of the mall. Old love. The man asked calmly as they got into the car. Dead. Diana laughed. She felt warm and happy that Henry was indeed far in the past.